Hey guys, what's going on? This is RJ from Game News USA here, and today I want to go over my top 10 Super Nintendo games. So, without further ado, let's get right into the list. The Super Nintendo is one of my all-time favorite consoles. I love talking about them, and it's really hard to pick only 10 games. So therefore, I tried to limit it to one per franchise the best I could. I will bring up some honorable mentions. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. Number 10 on my list is Mega Man X. It improved on every single thing Mega Man originally did on 8-bit consoles. Much like the other games on this list, the iteration, the evolution of each franchise is apparent. The colors, the graphics, the textures, the gameplay, all finely tuned to be better in their sequels than in the previous entries, and Mega Man X is no exception. It is one of the best Mega Man games, period, and it's number 10 on the list. Number 9, we got Super Castlevania 4. Ditto to everything I just said previously. It definitely evolved from the first 3 Castlevanias, and was clearly, in my opinion, it's either number 1 or the number 2 best Castlevania of all time, and it is number 9 on the list. Number 8 is F-Zero. Here's a brand new franchise that popped in. A game that's still fun. A game that's got a second life has F-Zero 99 on the Nintendo Switch. It did some butt-F trickery to figure out how to get that 3D looking plane to actually work. It is a game that I think is very underrated by today's gamers, and I think F-Zero is really fun to play. There's one more kart racer on here, though, that's a little better. We'll get to that later. You might hear the music in the background. Super Mario Kart, that is, but we'll get to that later. Before we get to number 7 on the list, I want to throw out some honorable mentions, because the Super Nintendo is full of great RPGs, and I don't want to leave them out. Earthbound is a terrific RPG. Final Fantasy III is a terrific RPG. But at the end of the day, number 7 on my list has got to be Chrono Trigger. A game you can pick up and play now, and it's as good as any RPG that's ever been out. It's extremely fun. It's got diverse, complex story. Its battle mechanics are great. The animation style is fantastic. Of course, designed by Akira Toriyama, the greatest manga artist of all time, and creator of Dragon Ball Z. Number 6 on my list. I didn't go with Mortal Kombat, but I'm going with Street Fighter II Turbo. There are many editions I could have chosen. However, Street Fighter II Turbo was the edition I liked the most. That edition, with the sped up gameplay, is just extremely fun. But you can't go wrong with any edition of Street Fighter II. Number 5 on my list. I foreshadowed it earlier. It's Super Mario Kart. Another series that was spawned in the Super Nintendo. We talked a lot about how there was good iterations from the NES. But just like F-Zero, Super Mario Kart is a brand new series on the Super Nintendo, and it's one that's stuck. Unlike F-Zero, which hasn't had that many sequels, Super Mario Kart's had a ton of sequels. It's one of the most successful franchises of all time. It's definitely the best spin-off of the Mario series. What's unique about that is every single character in the game had a unique special move when the computers played them, which I thought was very interesting. A lot of people complaining about the rubber band AI, but I think that just made the game more of a challenge. It is definitely one of the harder Mario Karts to beat the hardest difficulty on. It's easy to play, but difficult to master, which is what I want in a Mario Kart game. Now, there was a lot of repeat levels and repeat courses and whatnot, but give it a break. It was the first iteration. It actually had several courses, and once again, very clever how they did the 3D. It also had battle mode, which was very good. It's actually still one of the better battle modes in the entire series, and it was also really fun to play 2-player. So, I have no issues there. That's definitely a top 5 Super Nintendo game to me. Number 4, before I get to it, I want to give an honorable mention to Donkey Kong Country, the original. It could be just as good as any game on this list. It's great, but I gotta get the nod to number 4 with Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. And I know the third one's decent, people like it, but I think Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest is the best Donkey Kong Country game we've ever had. You play as Diddy and Dixie, and those characters are a lot better at platforming than Donkey Kong was. You got great 2-player action going on where if your character gets hit, the ghost of the other character comes in and you can continue to level. Its graphics were definitely some of the best 2D graphics you'll ever see on the Super Nintendo. The music is fantastic, especially the aquatic theme, which I've used on this channel before. It's decently difficult. It's got great boss battles, level design. I love 2D platformers. So it's not too much of a surprise that it's a game that'll be high up on the list. Let's get to our top 3. Number 3 on my list for Super Nintendo games is Super Metroid. This is a game that tops a lot of people's all-time favorite game. It might be the pinnacle of Metroidvania. Its atmosphere, the way you traverse the levels, it was a great iteration from the first couple Metroids. It's definitely, like, if I were to suggest anybody a single 2D Metroid, I would still suggest this, even over Metroid Dread or any other Metroid. This is the best 2D Metroid we've ever seen. The abilities that Samus is able to get, the series staples that are involved here, 30 years later, still have not been forgotten. Very much enjoy Super Metroid. Some people even enjoy it more than me and would have it higher on the list. Number 2, The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. No doubt, had to throw it in there. Once again, another iteration from great NES games in the past of Zelda. It's probably the best 2D Zelda. A Link Between Worlds is great, but it's just trying to faithfully be a sequel to Link to the Past, because Link to the Past is so fantastic. It's the one 2D Zelda that I would recommend over all the others. Even Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, any of those 2D Metroids, that style of exploring dungeons and fighting enemies, to me, that's the pinnacle of 2D Zeldas. So Link to the Past is definitely number 2 on the list. Before we get to number 1, I did want to keep it to just, one game per franchise the best I could. So I'm going to throw out an honorable mention to Super Mario All-Stars, because that's actually how I first played Mario Bros. 1, 2, 3, and the Lost Levels. And it's a fantastic compilation. It's really the first HD collection, if you'd like to call it that. So, I always like Super Mario All-Stars. People sometimes forget about it, they shit on it, whatever. It would easily be number 2 on my list, because I love 2D Mario games, if I wasn't trying to, give some other games some love and some shine. So with that being said, guys, I think it's no surprise what number 1 is going to be. Number 1 is Super Mario World. No doubt. Hey, on my NES list, Super Mario Bros. 3 was my top NES game. No surprise, Super Mario World is my top Super Nintendo game. It did everything that Super Mario Bros. 3 did, but better. Like I've said about iteration, they iterated on the series. They did keep the Koopalings in there, but they added Yoshi, they added Cape Power, they added the Dino World and all these special levels and secret exits, and it is just, still to this day, probably my personal favorite video game of all time. It was my first video game I ever played. It's nostalgic as hell to me. I'll play it every single year I live. And so, no doubt, Super Mario World has to be number 1 on my list. And so with that, guys, that concludes this list. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed that, please hit the subscribe button. Smash the like, and leave in the comments below what your favorite Super Nintendo games are. So, to all, a good night. I shall see you soon.